It's Enigma Hood. So I'm going to talk about possibilities here. Is it possible that God exists? Is it even possible? Let's put aside the whole question of does it exist? Is it even possible in the first place? Well, that all depends on two things. One is, what God are you talking about specifically? And two, what do we really mean when we're talking about possible? Well, let's first examine the first question. So, usually when people are talking about God, they're talking about the God of the Bible, the God described in Christianity or Judaism or Islam. So these are Abrahamic religions, and they all converge upon the same God. I know a lot of Christians deny that, oh no, we have nothing to do with the Muslim God. These are all Abrahamic religions, so they all worship the same God that's described in the Old Testament, the Talmud. So that God has a very specific definition. It is defined by its descriptions in Genesis. And basically, so if Genesis makes numerous claims about what God is and what it did, you can actually disprove the God it's describing if we can demonstrate that any one of these claims is false. So, sometimes people say, it's impossible to prove or disprove God. That's not accurate. If the definition is comprehensive enough, we can disprove it. Now, in the case of Genesis describes God as creating Adam from the dust of the earth and Eve from a rib of Adam. Well, that right there is a demonstrable claim. So they can demonstrate if this actually happened. And what we learn in science and in biology is that's not how Homo sapiens came about. We did not come from the dust of the earth. We evolved from prior life forms. So because of that claim about Homo sapiens, I shouldn't even say Homo sapiens, human beings, whatever, being created by God from the dust of the earth, that's been falsified. So because of that definition of God is not even possible. It's impossible to exist. It's impossible for the God of the Bible to exist because it did things. It's described as doing things that it never did. And I love doing this. I love pounding the shit out of stuff. So because it never did that, it can't even exist. It's not even possible. Now some people, they try to say stuff like, well, it's an almighty God or whatever the fuck it is. And so because of that, maybe it lied. Maybe it just created all the evidence to point towards evolution, but it really created Adam from the dust of the earth. See, that doesn't work either, because then that God is not the same God that's being described in the Bible. That God's a trickster God, which by definition means he's a liar. A pathological liar, I might add. And that characteristic is totally inconsistent with how Christians define God, because God, according to how a lot of Christians believe God to be, cannot lie. He cannot lie. He cannot lie. He can't play tricks. Now, it turns out in the Bible, he kind of does play tricks, with the devil. Of all people, he played tricks with the devil on Job, but that's a different story. But the fact of the matter is, since you have this diametrically opposed characteristic, he can't be, whatever that God, this trickster God is, that's not the same God that's being described in the Bible. So it's not the Christian God. So that God is not possible to exist. Now, what if we define God nebulously? Like, let's say it's just a being that created the universe and then left. So basically a deistic God. Is it possible for that God to exist? Well, I will say that at the moment, at least, we can't falsify that God necessarily because, while we do understand that the origin of the universe as we know it began, or at least the early evolution of it is described in the Big Bang, you could make up some stupid shit like, well, God initiated the Big Bang, right? You can make stuff up. So that would fit within their deistic framework. But is it possible? Well, that really is contingent upon what you mean by possible. So the problem is that people use the word possible when they really should be saying, I don't know. In order for us to say things are possible in the first place, we need to be informed with information, facts, and evidence. So you might say something like, is it possible for this building that I'm in right now to fall down on my head? Well, in response to that, you shouldn't say yes, it's possible. Some people would say yes, it's possible because of induction. Because that has happened before, right? There have been instances where buildings have collapsed. There have been instances where the ground literally gave way because a sinkhole developed underneath their house and they didn't even know it. People were swallowed up by the earth itself. So because there have been specific instances in the past where horrible tragedies like this have happened, that leads them to believe that it's therefore possible to happen even in the house that you're in right now. But that's actually a fallacy. It's known as a hasty generalization from weak induction. Just because it's happened in the past doesn't mean it's possible to happen right now. At best, all you can say is that we're ignorant. We don't have sufficient information to tell us anything about the structural integrity of the building that I'm in right now. At that point, all I can do is just plead ignorance. But I can't say it's possible. Everything I know about this building tells me that it is safe to be in. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in here right now. Can you imagine if there was a guy standing in front of a building and saying to every person that walks into the building, hey, by the way, just so you know, it's possible this building might collapse. What would people do? They wouldn't go in, or they would call the cops on this guy and he would be arrested for inciting a panic. Because that's not what possible really means. Just because it has happened in the past doesn't mean it's possible now. The only way to say something is possible is if we're informed with information, facts, and evidence, like I said. So are we informed with information, facts, and evidence to the existence of a deity, a being that created the universe and then just left? Or a being that created the universe and that's it? We don't know anything else about it? No. In fact, everything we know about the universe tells us that such a being cannot exist. This being would have to exist outside of space and time and would have to do things outside of a temporal framework and somehow is able to initiate a Big Bang. You know, like godlike, unbelievable powers which have never been demonstrated. So we don't even have induction to go on. At least in the case of the building collapsing thing, you do have weak induction to go on to say that it's possible, but even that's a fallacy. In this case, you don't even have induction to go on. You don't even have a single example of a God creating a universe. You can't tell me, you can't point and say, look here, I'm showing you a God creating a universe. Therefore, at least we know that gods exist and they do create universes. You can't even show me that. Because of that, you can't even say that a deity is possible. At best, we're still stuck with, I don't know. But the difference between me and some other people is that I'm willing to say, I don't know, but I also don't believe in it either because there isn't any evidence to indicate it. And I'm fairly justified in saying that it probably doesn't exist. And even if it did, it's inconsequential to our daily lives anyway. Post what you think in the comments below, dudes. Oh, and before I forget, I don't want to forget about this. I want to give a shout out to my friend Dante, Crysis. I've known this guy for a long time, and he has a YouTube channel, and he needs a little love and support there. So, you know, if you guys can do me a solid, check out his channel. And also, you know what else is a really good idea? You should follow me on Twitch too. That's also a really good idea. And also subscribe to my gaming channel. I'll put all the links, you know, and annotations and stuff like that, so you won't get confused. This is Enigma Hood signing off.